Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. This is Christine Boudreau. She's a holistic, functional minded psychotherapist based in Frisco, but she sees clients virtually. So she can see you from all over Texas. So that's a bonus. And she's going to talk to us tonight about stress management and give us some tools to deal with stress and anxiety and just go into a little more depth about what she does and everything. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Christine.
Thank you, Dr. Engels. Thank you for having me tonight. I really appreciate it. Yes, so we're going to talk about stress and anxiety, and I'm going to share my screen here so you guys can see my slides. How are we doing? Can everybody see that? Does that look good?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, like I said, we're going to be talking about 3 tools to overcome stress and anxiety. Again, I'm Christine Boudreau. Nice to meet you guys. Hi, everyone. Like Dr. Engel said, I'm a therapist. I'm based in the Dallas area. I do telehealth all across the state of Texas. I do have a functional medicine minded background, and also I'm a certified trauma professional as well as a triple certified coach. So that's a little bit about me. Here's what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to talk about how change affects us and how that brings about feelings. And then what is the purpose? What's the benefits of those feelings? We're also going to talk about stress and anxiety and why we're wired for it. And then we're going to go through 3 steps. The first step, 3 steps to cover how we can deal with this anxiety. And within those steps, we have several tools. So the first step is to gain awareness. The second step is release fear. The third step is to induce calm. And then we're going to have a bonus step. And this is the thing that I had mentioned in the video about the secret that might be blocking your success. And then we'll talk about some possible other things that you can do in addition to the bonus step. So, what are our objectives for tonight? Well, hopefully at the end of this webinar, you'll feel relief from agonizing stress and anxiety that you might be having about some diet and lifestyle changes or other things going on in your life. Hopefully, you'll understand more about yourself. You'll gain some new awareness and connect some of the dots and know what's tripping you up. And then you'll learn how to overcome obstacles that might be blocking your success. So let's talk about change. If you're going through any kind of change right now, then that's going to, without a doubt, produce a lot of feelings. And these might be some of those feelings that you're experiencing. You might be excited, you might be happy, maybe you're scared, maybe you're feeling overwhelmed. Well, the good news is that it's okay. This is totally normal. These feelings are normal. You didn't do anything wrong. You're just a human being experiencing life and change. And anytime you go through a big change, even if it's as small as having to give up your favorite chips or your favorite snack or your favorite caffeine delivery system, it's change, and change makes feelings happen. So, why do we have feelings? Well, hey, there's benefits. There's lots of benefits to feelings. And you don't always think that there are because sometimes feelings don't feel very beneficial. But feelings get your attention. And actually, hey, maybe these feelings are what prompted you to seek help in the first place. And you know what? That's a really good sign. That means you're listening to your body, you're acknowledging that something's imbalanced, and you're seeking to heal. So that's a really positive thing. High five. High five yourself. Um, Feelings exist to alert us to danger, help us survive, bond with others, have a shared experience with others. And through that shared experience, we build meaning and connection with each other. And one of my favorite things here is what's known as the feelings wheel. So, because we have this wide variety of feelings as humans, a therapist by the name of Gloria Wilcox tried to organize it all and put it into a chart here that we could kind of sort through what we're feeling. So, if you look there in the center of the circle, the center circle, you'll see 6 main things there. It's sad, mad, scared, joyful, powerful, and peaceful. So those are like the root feelings, if you will, or I like to call them parent feelings. And then the middle circle there, those are what I would call child feelings, off of the parent feelings. And then the outer ring would be like the grandchildren off the children. And then you could kind of play with the idea of, feelings are also cousins to one another. So let's take, for instance, tonight we're going to talk about anxiety. And if you look here I don't know if you can see my cursor, but anxiety is around the 3 o'clock area here on this feelings wheel. And if we trace it back to what is the root of anxiety, we see scared or fear. So what's helpful is when you're having feelings, you're not quite able to put a word to it or define exactly what it is you're feeling. It helps to have a tool like this handy. And you can search for this on the internet. You're also going to get a copy of these slides, so you'll have it there as well. Other folks have taken Gloria's feelings wheel and added to it and changed it up. And there's lots of feelings wheel on the internet. You can find whichever one you feel most comfortable with. But the point is that when you're having a feeling, you're not quite sure what it is, or you want to understand more about it, it can be helpful to you'll use a tool like this. So for example, maybe you know you're feeling overwhelmed but you're not really quite sure why. And so you can have this feeling wheel out and you can look and say, okay, well, embarrassed could be a flavor, an aspect of it. Maybe insecurity is an aspect of it. Let me think through that and let me try that on for size and see if that feels like that might be a good fit. And then again, I can see, okay, embarrassed and insecure is part of this section of the wheel that's in the scared category. So, all right, if I'm feeling maybe a little insecure or overwhelmed or embarrassed or any of these things here in orange, at the root of it again is that fear, it's that scared feeling. So, what is it that I'm afraid of? What is it that I have fear about? And asking yourself that question can be very healing because it adds another layer of information and provides another piece of data, another piece of the puzzle. And then you're able to kind of dissect what's going on and get to the bottom of it. So that's a handy little tool I wanted to give you guys. So having said all that, we know that we have a lot of feelings, and we're here tonight to talk about anxiety and stress and how when we go through changes in life, guess what? That's going to equal stress and anxiety. No shock there. So let's talk a little bit about stress and anxiety. They overlap, no big surprise, right? The big difference that I want to call out is that stress is a response to a specific external cue or cause. So let's say you've got a big test coming up, or you have a big presentation, an important luncheon with someone, you have an argument with a best friend or a loved one. Once that thing goes away, the stress tends to go away, right? You get through the test, you get through the presentation, you get through the luncheon. Oh, okay, I'm over it, I'm done. The other thing that folks tend not to realize about stress is that it can be positive, and it can be, let's say you're getting married tomorrow, you have a big wedding tomorrow. That's an exciting thing, but it's also a stressful thing. But it can be positive because it's a happy and a joyous occasion, but it still can be stressful. On the other side, we have anxiety. What's different from stress, what anxiety is different from stress in that it lasts, it's persistent, it doesn't go away. It's there all the time. Even if you don't have chronic anxiety, and because anxiety is kind of a spectrum, right? Some folks have more, it's more present than others, but it's not like stress where it comes and goes with the event. It's internal, it's inside. Where those two things overlap, you see things like tension, you have body aches, you might feel that your shoulders and your neck hurts a lot, maybe you have jaw pain, certainly any kind of uneasiness or stiffness in the body. Those are kind of the overlap between stress and anxiety. So having said that, it's definitely worth, I keep repeating, I can't say this enough. Anxiety is a stress response. I don't even know if I said that the first time, but let me say it again. Anxiety is a stress response. So what does that mean? Well, let's think about that. Remember the feelings wheel we just looked at, how the root of anxiety is fear, right? So what happens when we have that fear in our bodies, the positive aspect of fear is that it's getting us ramped up and geared up to deal with a threat, perceived or real. Perceiving that a threat exists is just as intense as the threat itself existing. Just having the thought that we might get attacked by a bear or a lion is enough to cause our bodies to ramp up to that, what we call the 4 Fs: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So it's natural, right? It's normal. Our bodies are doing this for a reason. It's keeping us alive, and that's a great thing. The problem is when we get stuck in that fight and flight and that 4F energy, because it's in there. It's the cortisol and all those that chemistry is working to get us to run away from the lion, but we don't have to run away from the lion. So then that energy just kind of gets trapped. So we've got to release it. And when we release it, we move out of fight or flight and into rest and digest, tend and befriend. And we'll get to that in a second. Talk more about that here in a second. So let's talk about 3 steps to get out of fight and flight and into reducing that anxiety. So step 1, we're going to gain awareness and we're going to anchor ourselves in the now. And within each of these steps that I talk about, there's going to be tools. Okay. So let's talk about within the step 1, the first tool. The very first tool and the most important thing that you can do is observe yourself. And it's not just observe yourself feeling anxious, it's observe yourself with any feeling. I mean, you could delete the word anxious and put in any feeling in there that makes sense, that you want to observe. And when I say observe, I mean you want to listen and pay attention to your feelings without judgment. Okay. We want to notice what we notice. We want to notice what we're noticing without criticizing, without that inner critic, without that toxic voice that kind of gets in our head and says, well, I shouldn't be feeling anxious right now. I'm such a baby. I can't believe I can't believe I have these emotions. Shame on me. And you get that waggy, pokey finger, you just want to observe. You just want to say, I think I might be feeling anxious right now. That's awesome. That's all you got to do. You just got to be the scientist and the lab rat. You want to put on that white coat and observe you like you're a scientist observing the lab rat. And some things that you can do while you're in that observation mode to help really hone in on what you're feeling is you can say, hey, where am I feeling this feeling? Where am I feeling this anxiety? Check in with your body. Am I like, oh yeah, my neck is tense. Oh, my shoulder, I can feel it right here. And you know what? Sometimes the physical cues are what you pay attention to first, right? So you might notice that, oh, my neck and my shoulders are hurting today. Oh, maybe I've been anxious lately. Yeah, maybe that's what it is, right? And the other thing you can say is, hey, what's this message trying to convey? What is it alerting me to? What is it alerting me to? And asking these questions, you get to understand it a little bit better. You understand yourself a little bit better. It's adding those layers and that puzzle piece in there. And finally, one of the other things to do when you're in this observation mode is, if you can do this, this is so helpful. What happened right before you noticed that you felt anxious? What happened? Was there something? It could be something as obvious as, well, I was having to drive in traffic on a very busy highway I'm not used to driving on. So it just made me nervous to be in that traffic. Okay, well, that's an obvious thing, but sometimes it's a very subtle thing. Like you might be scrolling or through whatever social media, you see something, whether it's an ad or a post from a friend, or you're watching television, you see a commercial. There could be something in there that triggers you, and it makes you anxious. So if you can pinpoint what that is a really key component to understanding more about why you're feeling anxious. So again, put on the white coat, observe yourself. You're the scientist. Observe yourself as the lab rat. It goes a long way. Second tool, when you're having those anxious moments, especially if you're in a moment of kind of that uncontrollable breathing from the chest and you're maybe even panicking a bit, you catch yourself doing that and you observe yourself having that feeling, you're in that moment, stop yourself and say, hey, listen, what can I see right now? What can I see right now? And you just look around the room and you name 3 things you can see, and you name 3 things you can touch, and you name 3 things you can hear. Because what's that doing is it's bringing your attention into the now and into the present. And what's going to happen is you're most likely going to hit those 3 things and still be kind of panicked. So go through them again. Go through them a 3rd time if you have to. And through that process, you'll eventually get back in the room. You'll eventually get to, September 21st at 7:17. Instead of being worried about something in the past or worried about something in the future, your attention will come back to the present. And this trick there is we only have control over the present moment. We only have control over the now. And if our minds are in the past or in the future, then we're unable to affect change, because we cannot affect any change unless we are here now. So this is a great tool to help you get here now. And that way you can be the scientist observing the lab rat, right? The third step, the third tool in our first step is to anchor yourself with an article or to an article. And so what I mean by that is get an item that means something to you and that has a comfort. You know, you think of like a comfy, a security blanket, literally like a blanket, right? Your favorite blanket, your favorite sweatshirt. Ideally, it's something that you can have on your person when you're out and about. And I know that's not always a sweatshirt or your favorite blanket. That doesn't always work that way. But that's okay. One thing that you can do is you can take a photo of it and have that on your phone and just look at your favorite sweatshirt. Sometimes you'd be surprised that that will help. So the idea is that you have this item. And so when you're in a meeting and you're getting stressed, you're feeling that anxiety bubble up, you feel the shortness of breath happening, you can, let's say you have a ring, and that's a special ring to you. It feels, you can twist that ring, you can just touch that bracelet. If you have like a crystal or a stone, perhaps you went to the beach and found a beautiful stone and you it just has this warm memory for you. You can certainly keep that in your pocket and you can just rub on that stone. And sometimes just having that just produces a nice calm, and it's able again to bring you back to the now and to get your presence and to be focused again in the now, where we can breathe and we're not responding from that stressful anxiety state. Okay, so having said that, now we're going to talk about step 2, which is releasing the energy. So remember I said that when we have this fear, we have this anxiety that is at the root fear, our bodies are working in magical ways that enable us to survive whatever that threat is. So we've got a ton of chemicals coursing through cortisol mostly, right? And we've got to release that energy somehow because it's gearing us up. So we've got to get it out. And obviously, a great way to get out energy is just to move. You can do that with dancing, you could exercise, anything that you can think of that involves movement. A great thing to do also is rocking and swaying. If you think about when we were infants or when we had babies, what we do, we rock them, right? They're crying, they're anxious, we rock them. We sway, we rock, right? We do these things. So it's you don't have to do big things, like you don't have to go, work out and do HIIT for 45 minutes or some extreme workout to get all that energy out. Hey, it might feel good for you. And if so, great, do what works for you. I just don't want to people to put a roadblock in their minds thinking, oh, I have to go do this 45-minute workout to release all this anxiety. That's not the case. And also, I want to say changing posture, just literally getting up out of your chair and moving into a different stance, a different posture, moving your shoulders around, stuff like that. Okay, that counts as movement. Obviously, the other things here, you can see the self-expression and the connection to others. Let me just take a moment to dive into that. The self-expression is just anything that feels comfortable to you, that expresses those feelings. If you want to do that in an art form, whether that's drawing or painting or scribbling on a piece of paper. The one little footnote I'll say is that if you're going to make some kind of art, do it with the freedom of a 3-year-old. We don't want that harsh inner critic judging, if it's good enough. We don't want that guy to have a conversation with us. We want to just be able to express ourselves without that harsh critic. Connection to others, hugging, cuddling, talking with a friend, being heard and having our feelings validated. These are all things that kind of allow us to release that energy. And there's many others too. I mean, it's just whatever works for you personally. And this is a great starting point. So, all right, step 3, induce calm. Calm, we want to bring all that calmful peace to us. So one tool that's excellent, my favorite thing in the world to do, is deep belly breathing. You might have heard of this. It's called diaphragmatic breathing. You might have heard it called that. Or if you've done yoga, you probably focus a lot on your breath in yoga. So kind of this, you might have already heard all this. The big thing with deep belly breathing is that, well, one thing is we all know how to breathe. I mean, we do without thinking. Yay. But the thing is that we don't realize is when we're anxious, like I said earlier, you're breathing shallow and you're breathing from your chest. When we're relaxed, we breathe lots of deep breaths from our belly, from our diaphragm. So one way to test if you're doing it, with a belly breath or your chest is put one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly and inhale and exhale. And if you're doing deep belly breathing, then when you inhale and exhale, the hand on your belly should rise and fall, and the hand on your chest wouldn't move at all. If you can also, while you are exhaling, you exhale with a ha sound, like you're fogging up a mirror. So you want to go, okay. And then when you inhale, you want to inhale through your nose and make a snoring sound like this. Now, I wouldn't recommend doing that right in the middle of a meeting because it might, interrupt the meeting. And you can do deep belly breathing anywhere without the ha and without the snoring. Just do your regular breathing. But the benefit of doing especially the snoring sound, is it's vibrating the back of your throat, which vibrates and kind of kicks in gear this vagus nerve, which is also a very key ingredient, if you will, to rest and digest and relaxing. There's this whole polyvagal theory. I would totally invite you to research and look into that. I believe I have a couple of books in my resource list at the end of this in case you're interested in that. But so the snoring sound helps you trigger that response to calm down. Okay. And then also I want to point out that when you exhale, ideally you want it to be longer than when you inhale, because that's mimicking what your body does naturally when you're relaxed. So by breathing and having these deep belly breaths and focusing even on our breathing, that allows us to signal to our bodies, hey, we're safe. It's okay. We can calm down. We can relax. We can let go of that anxiety. If nothing else, at least for the 30, 60 seconds that we're doing that belly breathing, right? All right. So tool number two is to practice self-care. And what do I mean by that? And I feel like that term gets so overused. Okay. And everybody's like, blah, 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 self-care. I don't have time for that. And even if I had time for it, I'll say I'll do that, but then you never get to it. And it's always tomorrow. I'm going to book that massage appointment tomorrow, but you never do it, right? So there's little micro doses of self-care that we can do throughout the day. And one of the ways we can do it is just to give to yourself the way you give to others. Be kind, caring, and compassionate to yourself, and say things to yourself that your best friend would say to you. Because again, that harsh inner critic sometimes is driving the car a little too much, and we need to put him or her in the trunk and lock it and duct tape them, stick them in the trunk, and then let us drive the car for a little bit and drive that car with love, kindness, and compassion. The other thing you could do, I don't want to read all this to you because I'm going to I get too talky, and then we won't get to the end of the slides soon enough. So listen to your body. You're doing that, right? You're visiting with Dr. Ingalls. You've made an appointment with her. Obviously, you're listening to your body and you're providing it what it needs. So bravo to you for doing that. I would say keep going in that direction and create space for all of your parts to express their wants and needs. And what I mean by that is we all have different parts in our that speak to us, right? Like you might have the part of you that is the person that responds to crisis well. When something's broken, when there's an emergency, a pipe breaks in the bathroom, and now you've got a plumbing issue. You jump in, you fix it, you figure out what needs to be done. That's a firefighter. We can label that inner part of you the firefighter. Maybe you've got the nurturing, caring, compassionate person, that part of you. You have the harsh critic judgment part of you. And there's more. There's many, many more. And if we can create space to let those inner parts express what they want and they need, and then we can honor those requests in a way that makes sense for the whole, then you'll just be able to overcome anxiety in so many different ways because you're giving yourself that care. And I know a lot of folks say, oh my gosh, I got so many people in my head. Does that mean I'm schizophrenic? I can't imagine what I must sound like to hear that I have all these parts. It must sound like I'm schizophrenic. It's not. You're not schizophrenic. This is totally normal. You're a human being and we all have parts. And as a matter of fact, there's a whole theory around it called internal family systems, IFS. So if that sounds interesting to you, please, by all means, Google it and learn more about it. But it's totally normal, okay? Quickly, I'll talk about touch. and how just having that pressure of being hugged or swaddled is very calming, and it's a great self-practice, self-care. I mean, a great way to practice self-care. Spending time outside is always good. Can't get outside, you can even just watch nature videos. You'd be surprised at how I wouldn't watch like a tornado video or hurricane or any kind of storm unless you find that calming for some reason. It's good, whatever works for you. Nourish yourself. Play, please give yourself permission to play in whatever shape or form that takes. Laugh is a no-brainer. And I'll say this, I told you I wasn't going to spend too much time on this slide, and I did anyway. Warm, let me tell you about warm. Holding a cup of warm tea, holding a bone broth, whatever it is that, that there's something about warmth and taking a warm Epsom salt bath. I mean, of course, warm baths, we know about that, but I can't stress enough how just holding something warm in your hands will, again, cue our body that, hey, we're safe. Hey, we can relax. It's okay. So something as simple as that, you wouldn't think it helps, but it does. Okay, last tool here in this section is mantras for self-compassion. And I know sometimes when I talk about this, I get the eye roll, and I understand it feels kind of goofy to have mantras and affirmations sometimes. And if you're old enough, you remember a character on Saturday Night Live. I think it was Stuart Smiley who would look in the mirror and say, "Doggone it, I'm good enough." So it feels kind of goofy, but I promise you, give it a shot. And I'm not going to read these affirmations here, but you'll have this slide, you'll have this after the video, and you can certainly screenshot it and keep it on your phone. And anytime that you're overwhelmed with that feeling of anxiety, just read through a list like this, and you'll be surprised at how much better you feel after you get through the list. And at first, again, you might feel kind of silly doing it. You don't have to say it out loud. You don't have to say it out loud into a mirror. Just reading stuff like this can help you feel better. And there's tons of affirmation apps out there too. So I know you can find some affirmations and some positive mantras that provide some self-compassion for you. All right. So now we are getting into the bonus round. And this is all the stuff that we've talked about up until this point. It's incredibly helpful, and it's important stuff. When you've got anxiety and you have those symptoms, to treat them it's just like a breath of fresh air. It's just a relief in so many ways. And so to keep that going and to make that feeling of relief last long term, to have that lasting feeling of relief, I recommend treating the root. And treating the root is the secret. And it might be the fact that if you're not successful with managing anxiety, it could be because we're not getting in there and treating that root. So what do I mean by that? What's the root? It's very simple. The root is the thing beneath the thing. So think of anxiety and all the symptoms like an iceberg, and like, the tip of the iceberg, that saying, it holds here. So when we look at the symptoms of anxiety, like if I can look at you and if you could look at somebody and say, what behaviors can I see with my eyeballs when it comes to having anxiety? You can see somebody tense, you can see somebody worried, right? I can't see your negative thoughts, but you might be able to witness somebody, your spouse, not sleeping and they're tossing and turning. So those are the things we see. Those are the symptoms of anxiety. Those are the things at the tip of the iceberg above the surface. But below that, what's going on? What's happened? You might have in your family history or in your own history some abuse, abandonment, neglect. Perhaps somebody abused substances, alcoholism. Maybe there's mental illness. Maybe you didn't feel safe at home. When we talk about the root cause of anxiety, and when we talk about what's below the surface, it's a spectrum. Okay. It's a lot of gray, and it's super, super dark gray or black on one side and super, super light gray or white on the other. And there's just a billion shades in between all that. So when we talk about root cause and we talk about the thing beneath the thing, some folks think, oh, okay, well, I know what that is. That's, you survived 9/11, you survived a horrific hurricane or a fire, you survived something, right? That was huge. It's a big deal. It made the headlines and the news and the newspaper, and the whole country knew about it. And we tend to minimize. things like, I was bullied, in high school for 4 years, and that was difficult, right? Or I'd never felt safe at home. It was just a chaotic environment. And I was kind of ignored by my parents. Those kind of things we tend to minimize, and we don't appreciate that that can affect us too. So treating the thing beneath the thing is really the secret to creating that lasting change and getting that lasting relief to the anxiety. And let me tell you a little bit more what I mean by that. So by working with Dr. Engels, I'm sure you've worked with her and she's given you the ACEs quiz. So know your ACEs score. Well, what is ACEs? ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And it's actually a study that was done many, many years ago. I think, 30 years ago or more by now. I think it was the late 80s. Fascinating story. If you haven't heard or read about this, you might want to go read it. I wrote a blog post about it. Go to my website if you want. But so the CDC and Kaiser Permanente did this study. And at the end of the day, they, through research, realized that things like obesity, chronic illness is correlated to childhood trauma, and childhood meaning before the age of 18. I would add to that or expand that and say it's anything that happened to you that occurred before you were able to live on your own, before you were independent. Okay. So it's the obvious things like abuse, neglect, abandonment, but it's also the other things that we tend to think of that don't feel like they're headline kind of stuff. And so we minimize that pain, right? If you didn't feel safe in your home, if you didn't feel safe at your school, then that counts. And know your ACEs score, because that is a key component to understanding the root so that we can treat. That's my alarm telling me I've talked too much. So understand the root so that you can help treat the symptoms long term and resolve some of those feelings long term. And there's one other component to this that I'll point out tonight, and that's being able to identify EIP. EIP is emotionally immature parents. So there's a great book on this. It's there in the footnote, and it's also on the resource slide when we get to that. But great book by Lindsay Gibson, Emotionally Immature Parents. So what happens there is we grow up in a home where we had parents who, they weren't physically abusive. There's no scars or anything, but perhaps they didn't give us enough attention. They ignored us. They were selfish, narcissistic parents fall here into this category for sure. They didn't offer any empathy. If you were sick, they might have scolded you for being sick. Definitely more the emotional scars and not the physical scars, but just as important. And I have clients that'll say to me, I cannot tell you how many times I get a client that says, we're going through history. I had a great child. My parents are great. They're wonderful people. And then as we get into our sessions together, we find out, well, my dad just always worked all the time, and I would ask him if he could help me with something, or I'd try to get his attention, and he never paid attention to me. I've never had a conversation with my dad, and I'm 30 now. I hear things like that. So it's those kind of things that can have an effect on you, and so that when you come forward into adulthood, when you come across a coworker or someone that reminds you of those feelings you had growing up in that home, and you're feeling like I'm getting ignored, or I need my boss to pay attention to this, I've got a problem, I need this help to resolve this, and your perception is that you're getting ignored and you're not getting your needs met, it can be a trigger, and it flashes you back to the past. And instead of responding to your boss in the now from your adult self, you respond from the pain of the childhood and respond from that child's pain. And so then that can look like some unprofessional behavior in the workplace, let's say that. So those are the kind of things I want you to think about when you're thinking through what is the root cause and what is the thing beneath the thing. It's this kind of stuff. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a flavor and some branches on the tree as we're growing these roots and we're coming out and we're trying to figure out what are all the pieces of the puzzle. Now, having said that, that's a lot. And sometimes it's triggering just to see those words on a page and to hear someone speak abuse, neglect, and abandonment. So I just want to take a moment, I want to center ourselves. Let's take that pause and let's breathe. Okay, let's center ourselves. Let's remember that we're here in the now and we're safe. We're safe. Okay, good job. So having said that, let's discuss some next steps you might want to take. You're in the driver's seat. This is totally up to you. Consider seeking therapy. Just think about it. It's not a requirement. I'm a therapist, so of course I'm going to suggest this, right? I think you're going to expect to hear that from me. Obviously, I'm going to tell you that there's benefits of therapy. And I would like to point out that one of the most important things about therapy is to reestablish your safety. Because when we're feeling anxious and when we have this stuff beneath the surface, the thing beneath the thing, it rattles us and we don't feel safe. And not only does it rattle us internally, but it's also externally. We may not feel safe in certain environments. So having a good therapist can help you work through that, and you can learn how to feel safe again in your own skin. The other important thing that you'll work with a therapist on is to identify triggers and then manage those triggers. So like I said, triggers some of them are real obvious. It's a no-brainer, right? But then there's other things that you're like, I don't know what happened. I feel anxious all of a sudden. I don't know why. So working with a therapist can help you figure out what those triggers are. And more importantly, you learn what you got to do and how you adapt to them. And over time, you slowly start eroding away at those your automatic response to that trigger. You're going to develop healthy coping skills. You're going to decrease all of your symptoms that you have associated with all that beneath the surface stuff, whether it's anxiety, anger, frustration, any of your inner toxic critic, your inner critic, your toxic shame. That's the kind of stuff that a therapist is going to work with you on. They're going to work to, if you have insomnia, if you're trying to get through having sleepless nights, they're going to work with you on that. An important thing too is that you're going to regain that power and control. A lot of the times the trauma and the anxiety has a way to control us, and it has a way to it drives the car, just like that inner critic is driving the car. And the beautiful thing about working with a therapist is that you get to take that power back. Like I said, you're going to put that person, that inner critic, that toxic shame in the back seat, and you're going to get to drive the car. And in doing that, we can make, as we work through all these things I just listened, you work on all this, you make meaning of the trauma. And what I mean by that is you're able to gain a different awareness, gain a different perspective, reframe it, and then incorporate that into who you are today and how you interact with the world around you. So, no surprise, a therapist is going to say all this, right? But what I would invite you to do is to seek a therapist. And by all means, I'd be honored if you chose to speak with me, but it's so important that you find someone with whom you feel safe and with whom you feel a connection, because this is a person that you're going to share, some of the most intimate stories of your life with, and you're going to go on a journey with them. They're the guide and you're the expert. And as such, you want to make sure you got a good guide that you feel that you're in the right hands. So when you're looking for a therapist, here's a list of things you might want to consider and ask. And don't feel shy. Don't worry about asking. Don't have anxiety about asking these questions. They're going to expect you to ask these questions. They're going to welcome these questions. And most therapists offer a 15-minute free consultation so you can get to know each other and see if you're a good fit. And they're going to expect to talk about this kind of stuff. So don't be shy, just hop in there and ask them these questions, and they're more than welcome to ask. And if you have other questions, ask them whatever you want. Okay, so in conclusion, anxiety is a stress response. We have 3 steps that we can use to shift out of that fight and flight and into rest and digest. First is to gain awareness and anchor in the new. Next is to release that energy. And third is to induce calm. The bonus step is to treat the root cause to get that lasting effect of relieving all of that anxiety or whatever the symptoms are that you have from that root cause. And then your possible next step, if you're interested, is to consider seeking counseling. So here's some additional resources. Like I had mentioned, there's some of the books here that I talked about. And at the very bottom here, we've got the ACEs quiz. You can go to aces2high.com to take that quiz. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you listening. And if you need me, you can reach out to me at Christine@dotswellness.com or my phone number there, 469-430-9955. And I look forward to hearing from you. And I wish you well on your journey to overcoming anxiety and stress. Thank you so much.
All
So
right.
Dr. Jones, I'll hand it over to you. Yeah.
All right. Well, that was great. Thank you. I was going to ask a few questions first and then open it up and see if anyone else had questions. I wanted to, if you can go back to the emotions wheel or the feelings wheel, because sometimes it's hard to differentiate between shame and embarrassment. And I thought it was interesting that a lot of people think shame and getting embarrassed are the same thing, but they're coming from different roots. So I noticed a shame is coming from sad and embarrassment is coming from scared. So I just thought that was interesting because a lot of times I have a hard time differentiating those feelings. So I didn't know if you could explain that a little more.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great question. And I'm so glad you pointed that out. And exactly like you said, so many times, we think we can't even identify what we're feeling sometimes, let alone, oh, to see this on the wheel and to go, oh, wow. So you're telling me that the root of shame is sadness. Oh my goodness. I didn't even think about that. I can't even get my mind around that. Like, what? So what's happening there is when we have shame, a lot of the times what's going on beneath that shame, remember the thing beneath the thing, is that there is some feeling of sadness, some feeling that think of it as you're mourning, like the loss of something. There, whatever it is that you have shame about, ask yourself, is there something there that you were unable to have or do or be? And in that not having, doing, or being, is there some level of sadness? Okay, so let me give you an example. Let's say, okay, so let's say we're on a new plan. We need to lose weight. We need to change our diet, change our lifestyle. We need to lose weight for health reasons. So I might have shame, right? I'm overweight. Let's say I'm very dissatisfied with the way my body looks. I'm dissatisfied with the way it moves. I'm dissatisfied with the way it feels. And I want to lose this weight. And I have a lot of shame about the weight that I'm carrying. Let's say I've gained weight over the last few years and I'm not happy with it. So I have a lot of shame around that. So I would say, well, what's underneath the shame? What's the thing beneath the thing? And when I dissect it and I drill deeper, I might find that I have some sadness and some lingering feelings of, I wish I could have not gained the weight. I wish I wasn't in the situation where I ate and to soothe my feelings. And I'm eating to soothe my feelings and I'm eating to experience comfort because what I'm really experiencing is feelings of sadness that I lost perhaps something in childhood that I didn't have. And so I'm now eating to comfort, self-soothe, and I'm gaining weight. So you see how there's this thread, there's this connection to something inside of us that's producing a feeling, that's producing, and we start from the bottom, we bubble up, and we get to the surface of where the shame is. Does that make sense at all?
And then can you explain the difference with embarrassment?
Sure. So with embarrassment, what we're feeling there is, let me think of an example. So let's say you are at a function, you're at a dinner function, and you are having to present an award. Let's say you're going to present an award at a function, and you have an embarrassment happen. You trip on the stage, and you're embarrassed by that. So when we start asking ourselves, well, why am I feeling embarrassed? What happened? Well, I tripped on the stage. That's embarrassing. Well, that's not uncommon. You can say to yourself, there was a cord in the way. Of course, I'm going to trip over it. Of course, I'm going to get, okay, well, that's something. But what else was going on there? Well, I was feeling insecure because of the way I looked. And I didn't like the fact, if we go back to the weight gain, I didn't like the fact that I've gained this weight and I had to wear a different outfit than I wanted to wear. And so I was already feeling insecure. And really, well, what's going on beneath that insecurity? Well, I'm afraid I'm going to be rejected. I'm afraid I'm going to get up on this stage and I'm going to give this award to this person. And I'm standing in front of these people, and the having all these eyeballs on me is reminding me of the possibility that other people in my tribe can reject me. And that makes me feel scared. And why does that make me feel scared? We might find this thread of being rejected by our peers in, some point earlier in our lives. So sometimes that embarrassment is really about the thread of being rejected from someone somewhere, talking about embarrassment in a public on the stage. So maybe that's the thread. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. And I had one more question about the 4 Fs. I've never heard of fawn before, so I didn't really know, what does that mean as far as freeze, flight? I can't remember the other one. Fight, flight, and then fawn.
Yeah. So fawn is people pleasing. So
Okay.
when we have a response to a stressor or a trigger, something causes us to respond, we can respond with, obviously we know what fight is, right? And fight can look like different things. Fight can just be having an argument. Fight can be I am going to just, let's say I am sitting in, okay, let's say I'm sitting in your office as your patient, right? And you say, okay, I'm looking at these reports, and what we need to do is take a look at cutting out some of the caffeine. So, oh gosh, don't take my caffeine away. So then I'm going to be like, I'm going to make me get angry and say, I don't want to take away that caffeine. You're wrong. Caffeine's the best thing ever. So, that's a fight, right? And then flight could be just me looking away from you and turning away. I mean, like I might walk out of the room, but just body posture, just turning away. Freeze, freeze is not just like a deer in headlights, which that is freeze, but it's also playing dead. So curling up, protecting, is that when you're out in the caveman days, we're going to curl up if something's attacking us and protect those organs, right? And then fawn, the people pleasing, is let's say you, as the doctor, tells me we need to have this new plan. We're going to implement these diet changes. And I say, oh, that's so wonderful. Oh, that's a great idea. I love that idea. You're so smart. That's brilliant. I wish I would have thought of that. And then I might even follow through and work on the things and make the changes that you suggest, because I want your approval. I want you to say, good job. And I'm doing it to please you. But then once we remove you from the equation, then I'm not going to follow through on that, those changes, because I don't have you to please anymore. So the fawning is all about people pleasing. And in particular, maybe one specific person with regard to one specific thing that we're doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.